The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome in, wrestling fans. You are now dialed into the PA Power College Podcast. As Jason Bryant of the Mat Talk Podcast Network said, I'm Tristan Warner, joined by my main man, as always, Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity. Beck Diggity, what you doing, man?
Not much, man. I'm just hyped up. Wrestling season's, it's really here. Official practice has started for NCAA programs. We had Who's Number One this weekend. I spent my entire weekend in wrestling-related things. Saturday, we had a college prospect clinic at the club I help with, and then Sunday our kids competed. So for better or worse, I spent my entire weekend in wrestling gyms. But it's back, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, I will say it's hard to believe that the college wrestling season is already upon us. For us, Mason, we're washed up old timers now who don't really get on the mats like we used to, or we're at least not running the bleachers against our will like some of these guys just did for a month or so. So it's easy for me to sit here in my chair to say that it feels like wrestling season came up quick. I'm sure some of those guys who just went through a grueling preseason would beg to differ, but nonetheless, wrestling season is here.
Yeah, it's like you said, it sneaks up on you, and I think you're definitely onto something. The fact that we didn't have to bleed through preseason definitely helped it sneak up on us a little bit more than it did the athletes. But rolling right on into things. So first and foremost, you talked about Who's Number One. I saw something that Eric Knopf-Snyder tweeted out, and I didn't really get the backstory on this, but PA Power as a whole got a shout-out by name from Terry Brands, complimenting what a great job that PA Power does as a brand. I'm going to immediately pass that over to...
No pun intended there.
I'm going to immediately pass all the credit over to Jeff and Eric, because Tristan and I have been doing a podcast for months, and this is something that Jeff and Eric have, worked so hard for. So that is awesome. Obviously, we appreciate it. But more than anything, glad that somebody like that recognizes the hard work that Jeff and Eric put in to this website and how dedicated they are. So that's awesome, just in general. Plus, PA Power is always the best, right?
Correct. Undisputed. Moving on.
Champion of the world. So moving on, recruiting news. Chris Wright, 3-time state medalist, the number 33 ranked senior in Pennsylvania, according to the one and only PA Power Wrestling website. He committed to Rider. The number 132 ranked senior in Pennsylvania, Cole Painter, committed to American. The number 44 senior, state medalist from Bethel Park, Jason Montgomery, he commits to UPenn. I feel like Penn's had a lot of commitments since Coach Renda took over.
Penn and Bucknell, I think those are the two teams we've seen pick up the most commitments here in
Pitt,
the fall.
By far.
Oh, Pitt too, obviously. The resurgence, what did I call it? The renaissance, the rebirthing of the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, which, by the way, did you see? So their room is still getting renovated. I can't remember exactly what.
They're getting a new room. They're getting new coaching staff. It's just a makeover of that program.
Well,
so big things coming.
It's
for Pitt.
getting renovated. They're not getting a new room, but there is going to be more mat space, but not. It's not like they're getting a completely new facility, but it's getting renovated, so things are getting updated. But they were holding they had to hold their first official practice out in Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, out where they actually wrestled duels, not, in their wrestling room, which is in Fitzgerald too. But they held it up, they hijacked the badminton and squash courts and laid the mats down and just went, yeah, we're going to practice here. So
wrestling takes over. It's a wrestling takeover down there.
Now, I'm sure they had the approval of the athletic department. I'm sure they didn't just go and do that. But either way, I'm sure that's a bit of an interesting situation going on there. I'm sure they'll be excited to get back in their room. Talked to Coach Gavin on Saturday. He said they'd be back in right around November. So sure they're looking forward to that. But anyway, So that's it for recruiting news.
That's a big pickup for Ryder with Chris Wright. I think out of all the guys we named, Chris Wright really stands out. He's been like you said, 3-time state medalist. He's been mighty close to getting on top of the podium a couple of years now for Central Dauphin. I think I just watched him win an NHSCA junior national title down in Virginia Beach in the spring. Little surprised he's going to Ryder. I want to say I talked to him this summer, saw him at actually a local gym around here. He's a Central Dauphin kid local. Thought for some reason he was interested in Navy maybe. I think he's in oceanography he plans to do from talking to him. But nonetheless, a big pickup for Ryder, crossing the border into that Garden State that we don't like to speak of. But nonetheless, we wish him the best of luck down there for the Bronx.
Well, hey, Ryder does have a decent amount of Pennsylvania ties. Nick Bedleon, Pennsylvania native, 2-time All-American at Kent State, is on staff. I know a couple guys that graduated from my high school back in I believe the 70s, the Morrison brothers. One of them was an All-American for Ryder, so there's some Pennsylvania ties going on there.
Somehow I'm going to guess Chris Wright's commitment to Ryder did not date back to the 1970s, but
I'm just saying there's Pennsylvania ties to Ryder. That's all I'm saying. I meant
had to take my shot.
I mentioned the current one with Nick Bedleon, who we were both actually. Were you on Danger when Nick was still there, or just when Ty was there?
I might have been on a team with Nick at least once, but I mean, I grew up wrestling with him over at Ken Cherto's home training center and stuff when I was a kid when I lived up that way. So yeah,
Cherto's, that's a throwback.
Oh yeah.
So, in other news, so big news out of Drexel, or at least what I thought was big news. Austin DeSanto is going to be in the lineup out of the chute at 133 for the Dragons.
Big news. Big news in a couple ways. One, that we're not going to see him redshirting. We'll see him out there with the singlet on. That's exciting news, especially everyone watched him with that epic win over Spencer Lee in the state finals. I think everybody wants to see him compete right away and see what he's capable of doing at the next level. But also interesting to see him move up to 133. I know he wrestled 126 in high school, so he's kind of hovering that line. Does he cut to 125 or does he go bulk up and go up to 33? Looks like he will be making the move up to 33. So excited to see what he can do. A District 3 kid from Berks County going to Drexel for the Dragons.
Is he a D3 kid?
Yep, barely. District 3 is out of Berks County, Exeter High School. So.
I guess I always associated Exeter with Philly. Yeah.
It's like I want to say Boyertown is also in Berks County and they're District 1. So the county's kind of split, I think, between which schools are District 1 and District 3, but yeah, Exeter's still in District 3.
That's interesting. Huh. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how DeSanto does. I mean, I think he'll be fine. It's always a shock to the system. I know I went through it as a true freshman. I mean, you get thrown into competition. You learn a lot. It's very much a trial by fire situation. DeSanto obviously is a kid that, he leans in. He kind of leans into challenges, takes them head on. I mean, he cut down to wrestle Spencer Lee in the state finals as a senior, right? So,
as I saw on Twitter, I can't take the credit for this tweet, but he's the real life Vision Quest, the real life Loudon Swing.
That's a fact. If ever there were one, it would be Austin DeSanto. So
he comes to mind. Yep.
Especially at a high school like Exeter Township, like who would have thunk it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think with DeSanto, it's going to be fascinating because we all know he has the work ethic and the mentality. Now it's just going to be a matter of how quickly can he adjust and get himself to that top flight Division I level. So excited to see what he can do. I'm sure Coach Azevedo and staff, they are more than excited, and they're already hammering away at the task. In other news, going back to Ryder, actually, Ryan Wolf, who was a former All-American at Ryder, he's crossing the state line in the good direction. He joins the Lock Haven staff out there with Coach Scott Moore. So that's always good to see. Speaking of Lock Haven, I saw, even though we knew that Chance Morstetter would be eligible semester 1, it was just cool to see pictures of their first practice, which they did outdoors, which seems like it's getting to be a bigger and bigger thing. Teams holding practices outdoors and getting out of some of the dungeon rooms that exist in the sport of wrestling. A little sunshine while you wrestle. But it was cool to see Chance back on the mat and back part of official practices. After what he's gone through the last year, it's just nice to see him back as part of the day-to-day things,
Yeah, for sure. Everyone's excited to see what Chance can do this year, especially now that he's back representing a Pennsylvania school. So big things coming for him, hopefully, in the 165-pound weight class.
Yeah, so the last little news and note thing, something I thought was interesting, and obviously involves a good friend of mine. So a former Lehigh All-American, Max Wessel, he was graduated with me, was a heavyweight All-American our 5th year, well, his 6th, my 5th year, our senior year. He actually co-founded a company, and that company is designed, or its mission is to connect employers with college athletes. And the thought process behind that, and I'm sure we've all seen the articles and studies and this, that, and the other thing that show that, the work ethic and the time management and all that goes into all the things you're taught as a college athlete, right? I'm sure you dealt with the same things that I did, Tristan. You go to a school where academics matter, or at least that you personally take them seriously. Being a Division I athlete, as well as a legitimate student, someone whose grades really matter. It's not just a matter of staying eligible. That teaches you a lot of really valuable things. And I know that as you move on into this crazy thing called real life, and you're forced to be an adult, that's something that employers value. So I thought it was pretty cool to see Max, and I know, obviously, from our time at Lehigh together, him and Cody Ferrara, who was a lax player at Lehigh, who was his co-founder, it was an idea they had at Lehigh, and they had talked about it for a while. So it was cool to see USA Wrestling do the write-up and do the article on their new company. The name of it is slipping my mind right now. Let me dig it up. NX Athlete, yeah. So you can find them on Twitter, NX Athlete, helping athletes find jobs and employers find athletes. So just a pretty cool mission statement, something I thought was worth mentioning. Right?
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, like you said, the values and the discipline and the competitiveness, everything that you learn being a college athlete, especially being a college wrestler. I mean, it is the most grueling sport that you can do and that you have to balance school with. So, any college athlete knows how to, balance their time, and they learn all the necessary tools to be a successful employee someday. So I think that's a really good idea that they came up with there.
Yeah, so excited to see how that pans out. Hopefully it catches on. So moving forward, we talked about the NWCA All-Star Duel last week, and there haven't been a whole lot of new contestants or new participants announced in the way of Pennsylvania natives, but what we do have are two guys with Pennsylvania ties that we already knew they were competing, and Darian Cruz and Mark Hall. They were already announced by the time we did our last podcast, but their opponents have been announced. So Darian is going to wrestle Nick Piccinini, who was an All-American at Oklahoma State last year. I believe he took 4th. Both of those losses being to Gilman. And then Mark Hall is going to have a rematch with Zahid Valencia. I am so excited about that match.
Yeah, Piccinini, a redshirt freshman last year when he placed 4th,
yes.
Right? Just a young guy, so he's a young stud who's obviously up and coming and just going to get better every year. So that'll be a really interesting test for Darian Cruz, who we talked to a couple episodes ago. And it's interesting to see how, he'll respond to obviously winning a national title just 6 months ago or whatever that was. And now he's coming back this year. We talked to him about if he has the kind of the bullseye on his back now mentality. He did a really good job of answering that question and talking about how, he's flipped the page and, 2017 is his. Now he's focused on 2018. He doesn't see it that way. And so, we hope that he comes out and lets it fly just like he did last year against Piccinini. Mark Hall Zahid, as you said, that was kind of the match that everybody was really hoping would happen last year. It happened in the semis last year. Easily could have been a national final. Mark Hall wins the match on, I guess, what was that? A headgear pull, penalty point, something controversial, but that was an extremely even match, as everyone expected it would be. And these are two guys that have been the top guys in their weight class all through high school, both folk style and freestyle and the international circuit. So Hall and Zahid are kind of the future of the sport at the 174 range weight class. So these guys, just now sophomores, will be going at it again. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the whole headgear pull controversy, it was not a controversy. And I understand that it was at the time and that people have talked about it that way. If you go back and watch the film of that, it was about as obvious of a pull as you could see. And I don't have a dog in that fight. They're both Mark Hall and Zahid Valencia. They're both guys I really enjoy watching. And they're just both a ton of fun. But when I saw the replay of that sequence there, I think the right call was made. Not that my opinion matters in that situation or many others. But I'm just excited to see. And I know one of the things that Zahid talked about in interviews after the tournament was that, he didn't really open up. I'm sure anybody that's ever seen Zahid wrestle, when he goes wide open, it is an incredibly fun thing to watch. And it's kind of terrifying, I'm sure, for anybody that's got to sit there and have to game plan for him.
Yeah, and I'll also say that Zahid also, he really earned my respect, not just as a wrestler, but as a person too. I think he gave a couple interviews, maybe even on Flow, after the Mark Hall match, where they were kind of asking him about the, quote, controversial headgear pull. And he even owned up to it. He said, he kind of admitted, if I remember correctly, that he did pull the headgear inadvertently. But, he didn't make any excuses. He said the call was made and, it was not a bad call. And, he has to do better next time and focus on getting third place. And that's exactly what he went on a tear to come back and get third. So, I had a lot of respect for the way he answered those questions sometimes. And, in the heat of the moment, right after you come off the mat, losing the NCAA semifinal in a crazy way like that, guys' emotions are flying, but Zahid was as composed as anyone I've seen, especially for a 19, 20-year-old kid. So these guys are both extremely easy to root for just because they're so good and good guys off the mat. So, yeah, Mark Hall, Zahid going down at NWCA All-Star Classic.
Yeah, Darian and Piccinini, as you touched on, both very high-level guys. Obviously, Darian is a defending champ. Piccinini as a returning All-American. Last year's a redshirt freshman. Both guys that score a lot of points. They're both tilters on top. Being an interesting style matchup. I don't know if they've ever met before. My guess is no, just because Darian is enough older than Piccinini that they probably didn't overlap very much in high school. But it'll be a fun one. Both of those will. And, I'm sure all 8 of the other matchups that they announce will be fun ones to watch. But a weight we know is fun. That proved to be last year, and I'm sure will be moving forward. 184. So for the 5th weight preview in a row, it begins and ends with a Penn State guy. This time, it's Bo Nickel, who is just generally good at the sport of wrestling. He's got that pin move down really well.
A whole plethora of pin moves.
He knows how to hit the pin move. The one the ref will slap the mat and
the mat slap.
It's the mat slap, and the match is over. I was terrible.
It tends to be in under a minute against some of the top 5 guys in the country in the most heated matches of the year in front of a huge crowd. Those type of pins.
Yeah, and by the way, so that made me think of the Sammy Brooks match in the semis. Was it just me, or now I think Nickel's better than Brooks anyway. That much has been proven, but Brooks would go out when he wrestled Nickel, and the Spladle and Carver Hawkeye aside, because that was just absurd. But Brooks goes out in the national semis and starts getting into an over-under situation with Nickel. And I'll never forget watching that match live going, that doesn't seem like a bright idea. And sure enough, about 5 seconds later, Brooks is looking at lights.
I will play devil's advocate here and say the year before in the NCAA finals, Miles Martin was okay with going upper body with Bo Nickel, and Bo Nickel's, lat drop attempt failed or something. Actually, twice I think it happened.
Martin got a lat drop. That's what it was.
Well, in the first couple seconds of the match, Bo Nickel tried some kind of throw, I think, and got taken down. He, slipped, tried a lat drop or double overhook throw, missed it, and got taken down, if I remember right. Then a little bit later in the match, they were kind of right on the edge of the mat. Like, I think Miles Martin might have already been out of bounds, and they were kind of over under. And I think Bo Nickel went to try to do like an ankle pick, and that's when Miles Martin actually lat dropped him out of bounds. So just to play devil's advocate, Miles Martin at least had some general success, at least in that one bout, beating Bo Nickel from that position, at least in a few scenarios.
Yeah, but I think the difference there is the fact that in those scenarios with Miles,
I'm not saying I don't agree with you.
No, I guess my thing is, why would you force that with Nickel? So those situations with Miles were ones that Bo was the one, moving forward, creating the pressure in them, and was the one that dictated that they go upper body. And Miles, to his credit in both situations, was able to wrestle through them, right?
Well, I'll say this too. If I'm Sam Brooks and I'm a fifth-year senior, I'm in the NCAA semis and I'm wrestling Bo Nickel, who last time I wrestled him, I shot a pretty nice sweep single and I got put in the tightest, most ridiculous spladle I've ever seen in probably the sport of wrestling in 38 seconds. I'm not sure I have an entirely foolproof game plan, and I'm not sure that any kind of leg attack is a good idea. So I'm just going to go, balls to the wall and try something. And if it works, great. And I don't know, maybe that's the mentality. I'm not saying that's the best way to approach the NCAA semis, but hey, you're already an All-American. You're going up against a guy like Bo Nickel, who is just an absolute freak of the sport, can pin you from literally any position at any time. So I don't know, maybe Brooks just thought, here's my moment. I'm going to go for it. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, but I'm leaving it all out there. Yeah,
that's a very good point. And you could be right. I mean, Nickel's another guy that 7 minutes is such a long time against a guy like that.
Exactly, my point.
So moving on from Nickel, we've got Pete Renda, who was NCAA third in 2016. He's a 3-time national qualifier, who we have an awesome conversation with him coming up later in this podcast, so stay tuned for that. But Renda, down at NC State, he's a Brandywine Heights native, was a state champ for the Bullets in high school, which great high school mascot, by the way, the Bullets. Always thought that was a good one. So Renda's up there, and that tournament he had in 16, I mean, he was always good, but I mean, he teched his guy for third and fourth at the national tournament.
He was a 13 seed. Upset his way into the semifinals. His only loss came to Gabe Dean in the semis, and then came down and dropped down. Beat I think Matt Miller from Navy in the semis, and then tech Nolan Boyd from Oklahoma State for third. So an incredible run to third place in 2016. Took a redshirt year this year. Pretty sure he went. I wouldn't say he went undefeated, but I think he might have lost at the Midlands. But other than that, I think he went undefeated. He bounced up to 197 for a few matches, but he's on gear to contend with anyone at 184 this season for the Wolfpack in his last season of eligibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Another ACC guy, Zach Zavatsky, Greater Latrobe native. Zavatsky's a guy that has been awesome in the regular season, and just it's kind of snake-bitten at the national tournament. So you mentioned how Renda upset his way to the semis in 16. Zavatsky was one of those guys that Pete upset. I think that was Renda's first win over Zavatsky. Zavatsky was the 5 seed, and that was who Pete beat in the quarters. And then Zavatsky fell down and lost in the wrestlebacks. And then this year, I can't remember
I want to say he fell victim to the Jeff Gordon T-shirt this year, but I could be wrong.
On the front side, that may be true, but the lasting image I have of Zavatsky's national tournament was, and I was sitting in the Virginia Tech section when this happened too, so it was kind of hard to miss. He got eliminated on an awful defensive pin call or a neutral pin call.
And I want to say it was pretty early, like second round, maybe second or third round. It wasn't.
No, I think it was Friday morning. So it was before the round. It was definitely before the round of 12, and I don't remember the situation, but I do remember thinking, and the entire, again sitting with the Virginia Tech crowd, the entire area around me, and pretty much the whole arena. Anytime someone gets neutral pinned at the national tournament, it's kind of one of those things that people notice. And that was just, I remember thinking it was an incredibly bizarre call and that it just wasn't warranted. So that said, hopefully Zavatsky, is able to put things together at the national tournament and get himself on the podium like he's absolutely proven he's good enough to do. He belongs there. He just hasn't put that tournament together.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, you hate to see calls like that made anywhere, but especially at the NCAA tournament where that kind of just crushes a guy's season, But luckily for Zavatsky, he was a redshirt sophomore this past year, I believe.
Yeah.
So he's a redshirt junior now, 2 more years to get it done. I think he will at least get on the podium this year. Moving on, also Dakota Gear from Edinboro. We talked about him in our Edinboro preview. He was just a true freshman this year. Went, I believe, 1-2 at the NCAA tournament, but I think he ran into Miles Martin in the backside and somebody else pretty tough. So he's a guy who could compete to get on the podium this year. Also, we have Joe Hayob from Penn. I'm not sure if he was an NCAA qualifier this year, Mason. Maybe you could confirm that. But I know when we talked to Coach Roger Renda, he talked about him as being one of his leaders on the team and a guy who's been in the lineup for a few years. So he's definitely a guy who you could expect to see in Cleveland come March.
Yeah, and just to go back to Gear for a second, talking to some friends of mine that wrestle at Edinboro, apparently he is just an absolute freak of nature, strong. And if you ever watch him wrestle, he's one of those guys that you can kind of see every now and again. You see someone that go, you shouldn't physically be able to do that. You know what I mean? And Dakota's one of those guys that pulls off those things. He must be ridiculously strong because you shouldn't be able to pull a guy's leg in like that. To your question about Joe Hayob, he was a national qualifier last year. Was a 7th place finisher at EIWAs, I think. So got himself to the national tournament. And like you said, I know Coach Reyna is excited about him coming back. And this is a complete side note because there are no Pennsylvania ties with this next guy I'm about to mention. But with 184, I saw this and I had to bring it up. I was looking at Flo's rankings, and Max Dean, who is Gabe Dean's little brother, is ranked 20th. Max is a freshman. That means for 8 straight years, presumably, unless Max moves up or down, for 8 straight years, there will be one of the Dean brothers at 184 for Cornell, and he's already ranked 20th. So it's very possible for 8 straight years there will be one of the Dean brothers ranked at 184 in the top 20 in the country. That family just doesn't go away. Okay, and joining us on the program now, a 4-time Pennsylvania high school state medalist, a state champ as a senior. He's a Brandywine Heights graduate, now wrestling for the Wolfpack at North Carolina State. Through his first 3 years, he's a 3-time national qualifier, Division I All-American. As a true junior, he took 3rd at 184 pounds. Coming off a red shirt last year, Pete Renda. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So, first of all, obviously, we're in early October. This is right about the time of year things are really getting rolling in the room and with your guys' preseason, and we're close to the start of official practice. How are things going for you guys? How you feeling in preseason? And how you guys feeling about the team for this year?
It's going really good. We just finished our last day of preseason workouts this afternoon, actually. So we get a few days to recover this weekend, and then we'll be back at it next Monday. But our team's looking really good. I've noticed from my freshman year up until now, it's just a night and day difference from the competition in the room. And, so it's going good.
That's good, man. I'm sure you're a little bit excited. This is your last preseason ever, right?
Last one, all done.
Yeah, I know that. I can't speak for Tristan, but I know that was a great feeling for me knowing my last preseason was done.
I was just going to say I'm glad to be done with all the running.
Yeah, I don't think anybody enjoys that stuff. So, in the last month or so, obviously things have kind of been shaken up with your guys' program with Frank Beasley leaving to take the head coaching job at George Mason. And I know that Frank was a big part of your guys' operation. What have things been like in the weeks since that, with him transitioning out and now Donnie Vincent transitioning in. How has that been? How has the team kind of reacted to that, and how's everything going right now with Coach Vincent?
It's been a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be. Frank did play a huge role in what we had going on, but I think this year we have a lot of older guys on the team, and with a lot of the RTC guys there, there's plenty of guys to support us. And Donnie actually just got here today, but I think he's going to be a great fit for our program. I think he's going to fill a lot of the holes.
Pete, backtracking a little bit, I wanted to ask you about just going all the way back to high school, coming out as a big stud, coming out of Pennsylvania, probably getting looked at by a lot of schools. What was it about NC State that stood out to you to want to go all the way down there? And what about Pat Popolizio as a coach that not only attracted you to go there to begin with, but just talk a little bit about how he's built that program into what it is today?
I think the big difference I saw was just in Pat's vision, basically. It was a pretty hard sell for him at the time. I think they were coming off like a 63rd place finish at Nationals or something that year. And I could just, from the things he was saying, I felt like he really believed in what he was doing, and I felt like he was going in the right direction. So that's why came to NC State.
You touched already a little bit on how much of a night and day difference it is as far as competition in the room between the time you got on campus and what things are like now. Can you kind of walk us through how that change happened? Was that just getting higher and higher level recruits in the room, or was that, something that came from Coach Popolizio down? Kind of how did that process all take place?
I think there's a lot of things going on, but just all the guys getting on the same page first off, and then having guys kind of show the way it's done for us. Having Nick in the room and watching him win a national title, I think was huge for a lot of the guys in the room. And then a bunch of other guys, Tommy Gant, and that whole class. Just seeing their success, getting up to being ranked number 2 in the country 2 years ago, beating teams like Iowa and Hokie State. And I think that that's just been contagious in our room now. And guys like Kevin Jack coming up and just showing that you can be a freshman and become an All-American. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then Pat doesn't let guys stay in the room that aren't on board completely. So he gets rid of anything that could possibly bring us down.
Pete, looking back at your season 2 years ago, you obviously redshirted this past year. Looking at the 2016 NCAA tournament, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you came in as like a 13 or 13 seed, and made it to the semifinals. I think your only loss of the whole tournament was Gabe Dean in the semis, and you ended up taking 3rd place at 184. Just walk us through that tournament and like not only how pleased you obviously probably were with your performance, but how did you mentally prepare for that, and how did you overcome, you go in as a 13 seed, obviously had a couple losses to shake off, but how did you just mentally prepare and go out and just peak at the right time?
So after my sophomore year, I had a pretty rough season. I wrestled a bunch of really good guys, and my record, I was just about, I think like a little over 500 actually. And so that summer in between sophomore and junior year, I knew I needed to make some changes. And a big change I made was just my mindset. So going into junior year, I was really just focusing on just having fun and just getting better every week. So I took some losses throughout the year that I think I could have beaten guys, but I was trying to stay, trying to open up the whole season. And I think that really helped me towards the end of the season. So then at Nationals, I just took it one match at a time and just focused on the next match.
Do you think there was any one match
whether it be at NCAAs or late in the season. I know that you had a huge win against Mickless from Missouri late that season. Was there any one point, like one win or one moment where you really felt like it clicked and things, you really knew like that you could compete at such a high level?
I think that the two big ones were beating Sammy Brooks at Iowa and then Willie Mickless against Missouri. Mainly because we're training so hard all year, and I was losing a few matches. I wasn't feeling 100% in, and then as we started to ease up on our training, that's when I got those two wins, and then you can really see just how much better you are when you back off your training at the end of the season.
So you finished third place at NCAAs in 2016. That's after your junior season. You're looking to turn the page going into your senior year. What went into the decision for you to redshirt this past year?
A few things. I wanted to get some experience in freestyle and, being in college. I think that was a really good decision. I got to go to Dave Schultz and Bill Farrell tournaments last year and get some international experience, which I think was really beneficial. And then the second thing was our team's going to be really good this year, so we just kind of wanted to hold off and wanted to be a part of that.
So with, obviously wanting to get freestyle experience, I know obviously you still got your last year in college to worry about, but does that mean you think you're leaning towards continuing to compete once your college time is up?
Yeah, I definitely want to give that a try and wrestle for a few more years.
Okay, I was gonna say that makes sense if you're trying to get freestyle experience after when you're 3-4 years deep in school. I guess just looking forward, you mentioned you feel like you guys are gonna have a pretty good team. And obviously that's been the case the last 3, 4, 5 years as things have really started to click for your program. What are some of the things, whether it be on the schedule or, just that you personally are excited about for your guys' team coming up this year? Is there any one date you have circled or just excited to get back in the lineup?
Well, I'm definitely excited just to be back on the team, sitting on the bench. But as the team goes, we have a big duel against Hoagie State out in Italy. It's going to be a really, really good experience. And, just a couple duels. I'm excited to wrestle Ohio State at home, and just our whole ACC schedule is really fun. UNC match is always a fun match.
Pete, are we going to see you at 184 again this year? I know you wrestled a little bit at 97 last year when you were redshirting. Was that just kind of you didn't want to cut weight type thing, or is there a chance we'll see you at 97?
No, I'm going to be at 84. Mike Machiavello is going to be up at 97. So, yeah, we decided that last year, at the end of last year. We thought he could put on some more weight than I could. So he's up to like 215 right now. He really filled out, and I'm weighing like 200. I'll be back down at 84.
I was going to ask one more question. I want to talk a little bit about I feel as though NC State is starting to, they've always kind of had one, but now that Papalizio is there and you guys are a really premier program, Pete, do you feel like you guys have kind of a pipeline going with the state of Pennsylvania now? You got Hayden Hidley down there. I think Wade Cummings might still be down there as one of your 125 pounders. Probably a couple other guys I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but do you feel like you're attracting more Pennsylvania guys?
I think so. I think Frank recruited up there quite a bit, and just trying to get the best guys in the country now. And, happens a lot of them come from PA, so doing a lot of recruiting up there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know, obviously, like you said, you're going to go where the best guys are, and I think all of us take a lot of pride in the fact that that's home for us, with Pennsylvania, and you see so many of us that end up wrestling on Friday and Saturday at Nationals. But hey, man, I guess at this point, you got anything else for us? Anything you want to say about maybe any kids that are looking at the NC State program, or just anything you want to get out there?
Nothing on the top of my head right now.
Well, hey, man, obviously thanks a ton for coming on. We know how busy life can be this time of year, so we really appreciate you taking the time out of out of your day to, indulge us and talk to us for a little bit. So thank you again. Wish you nothing but the best of luck, and, hopefully get to see high up on that podium again, wrestling on Saturday night in March.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, good luck, man. Keep making Pennsylvania proud. We'll move on to our Who's Number One recap. So some incredible matches went down Sunday night at the Snake Pit, right? Is that what you call it out there in
That's
Bethlehem?
not just what we call it. That's what everybody calls it.
All right, that's what everyone calls it. So I'll just first start off and say there was a ton of good matches. We'll recap a couple of the real big ones that had PA guys in it, but just the first thing that jumped out at me here that, Mason, you wrote down on the outline that I didn't even think about, Penn State recruits go 0-4. How about that?
Yeah, and I mean, look, that does not matter in the least. That is not, the ship is...
That's no way indicative of how, that their recruiting class is not promising. As we've talked about in earlier episodes, it's already like the best recruiting class. One of the best maybe in recent memory, with just in terms of how highly ranked, how many guys they have coming in are. But like you said, just an interesting note that, 0-4 at Who's Number One for Penn State recruits.
So those four guys, not Nick Lee, Joe Lee, there we go. I always get their names flip-flopped. So Joe Lee, Gavin Teasdale, Michael Beard, and Roman Bravo Young, all four went down. RBY lost an overtime match to Joe Silva, in a match that, RBY is best when he's just wide open. He can score what seems like any one of 20 ways. And Silva, to his credit, and this is high-level wrestling, Silva stuck to what he does best. They went to overtime. Silva found a leg and executed the finish and won the match in overtime. So really a well-wrestled match by Silva. I'm sure it's not one that RBY is thrilled with, obviously, but still an incredibly talented and just ton of fun to watch guy. Michael Beard went down to another Pennsylvania guy, Gavin Hoffman, who's headed to Ohio State. So that...
I was just going to say, these two are going to be going at it for years, you'd presume, if they're around the same weight
You'd
class.
have to think so, right? I mean, they're both...
Border war with Ohio State and Penn State, both Big Ten guys, both obviously going to be studs in college. So this is just the first of many.
Yeah, they're both just absolute hammers, both extremely athletic for big guys. Some of the scrambles that went on in that match were awesome. Hoffman's reattacks and his game plan were really, really high-level stuff. The first reattack, especially, that Hoffman scored off of was awesome. Something that, and it wasn't one of those reattacks that was good for a high school kid or it was good for a big guy. It was just really, really good wrestling. And then Beard kind of started to dig out of the hole about halfway through that match. It was like a switch flipped and momentum really switched the other way to Beard's side. And Beard took him down to tie it up with a little over a minute to go, if I remember right, and cut him right away. And it was kind of funny watching the match, with the momentum swings as they go back and forth. It really felt like Beard was going to get the last one to win. And to Hoffman's credit, man, he actually kept shooting, but held him at bay, got the win. Gavin Teasdale fell to Pat Glory.
And Pat Glory looks pretty hard to score on.
Pat Glory looks incredibly annoying to wrestle. That was my very first thought.
Somebody I'm friends with compared him to me. He said he looked like he wrestled just like me. Like every time someone got on his leg, some kind of scoot, some kind of. I was flattered, even though he's a high school kid. But I'm definitely not that good, and that was the way I wrestled. But he's obviously perfected it a lot more than me. I'll say that at this level, being able to beat Gavin Teasdale, that's an incredible feat in its own right, and he's got plenty of career left to keep improving.
Almost so. Jesse Delgado-ish with the way he dove over right away.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but yeah, and the thing from Teasdale's perspective and from looking at Teasdale as a prospect and as a recruit, Gavin had to have been in on 10 deep leg attacks in that match. Now, you can make the argument that Glory was maybe letting him do his leg because that's where Glory really scores his points, is in scrambles against high-level guys. But with the way Teasdale can get himself 2 legs, I still walked away from that match incredibly impressed with Teasdale and the way he can create offense. I don't think that's anything that Penn State fans need be worried about.
No, not whatsoever.
And
just
then Joe
high-level
Lee,
match for two high school kids going at it.
Yeah, just two extremely high level guys. It's that simple. And then Joe Lee falls in a barn burner to David Carr, which was really a one sequence match. It was 1-1. Carr gets him on a really nice attack in the third and transitions right into a tilt, so he gets 5 out of it. The match ends up 6-1, I think it was. Wasn't a 6-1 match. Again, really a one sequence deal. So those are the 4 Penn State recruits. Unfortunately for Penn State fans, they go 0 for 4. But fortunately for Penn State fans, that doesn't affect anything that happens when they're in Happy Valley. So other Pennsylvania guys that were competing, we talked about Gavin Hoffman getting the dub. Trent Hidlay in what had to be the most entertaining 20 seconds of the night, which is saying a lot because there was a lot of seriously entertaining stuff going on. So Trent Hidlay, for those who don't know, him and his brother, and I have no idea what the origin of this is. I don't know if they just really like hoagies, but they are members of what they call the Hoagie Club. Their middle names on Twitter, well, I think Hayden's first name on Twitter is Hoagie, and then Trent's middle name on Twitter is Hoagie.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, like what? And I don't even know how you would. So Trent, from what I can tell, eats hoagies constantly, and he had one before the match against Julian Ramirez at Who's Number One. So Hidlay finally in overtime gets himself into his underhook, starts to drive through Ramirez. Ramirez tries to go lat drop. Trent actually stuffs him, pins him out of it. All hyped up, gets up, celebrates, and Jarrett Lane, one of his good friends, Lehigh commit, by the way, is Matt's side and throws him a hoagie. Trent catches it, unwraps it, takes a bite out of it, hands it to the assistant ref, and walks into the middle to shake hands. The best celebration of the night by far. One of the best celebrations I've ever witnessed.
Like I said, you can't make it up, and if you know the backstory behind it, it's even sweeter. Just because, like you said, it's all over Twitter. Trent Hoagie Hidlay, Hayden Hoagie Hidlay, they're all over the place with the hoagie stuff. No one really knows what it means or where it comes from, but nonetheless, an incredible celebration.
I once saw an explanation. Ryan Price tweeted it at Hayden about what does one do to become a member of the Hoagie Club, and Hayden's response was, "You gotta love hoagies, eat them all the time, and tweet dumb stuff."
Love it, and I also love the use of the word hoagie, just because so many people these days say sub, but the hoagie is really, I don't know if it originated there, but born and raised in Philly, hoagie is what you say out there. Definitely say it in New Jersey. I've heard it a lot. So I really like the use of the word hoagie, bringing it back after so many people just say sub these days. That's not very appetizing, but hoagie definitely has more of a mouth-watering effect, I would say. And Trent, hats off to him for that.
Appreciating the vernacular. So, and then, Justin McCoy, state champ out of Chestnut Ridge, he went down against Brayton Lee. That match, I was actually really impressed with McCoy and the way he competed with Brayton Lee, but that kid, man, he's real deal good. Not that Justin McCoy isn't, but Brayton Lee right now he's an extremely hard guy to beat for a high school wrestler. And
he's no relation to the Joe and Nick Lee, is that right? Just a coincidence?
Yeah, just a coincidence. At least there's no relation that I'm aware of. So that's Who's Number One. Shout out.
Our last one, Sammy Sasso.
Oh, yeah.
Can't forget that.
Huge
win.
Intentionally skipped him because I want to.
Avenging his loss from Fargo against Anthony Artelona from Florida.
I intentionally skipped him to save him for last, and I forgot about him like an idiot. Sorry, Sammy. So Sammy Sasso ends the night, the hometown Lehigh Valley boy, after, he didn't feel like he performed great last year at Who's Number One. Like you said, avenges his loss against Artelona from Fargo. Not only with the win, but they get into a scramble, as Sasso so often does, and it ends with Sammy in a cradle, as it so often does, and he pins Artelona. The place goes insane. There's a picture on Twitter that is freaking awesome. Right after Sammy pins him, and it's standing up, celebrating, and the whole, he's a Dark Knights is his club. and you can see all of his Dark Knights teammates and friends sitting mat side right behind him going crazy. So that was awesome. Could not have scripted a better way to end the night. With a hometown kid, making the place, just blowing the roof off the place, and, showing some PA power.
Yeah, that's right. Huge win for Sasso, who, has he committed yet?
No, which is insane. Neither is Hidley.
Yep, you're right. I know Hidley was taking his visits recently. I'm not sure where Sasso is with his status of his commitments, but I'm sure Jeff Upson and Eric Knopsnyder, as we were talking about, will get on that and be, the first ones, one of the first ones to announce that whenever they can. Hopefully get those guys on the podcast to discuss their commitment whenever they should.
They'll have the scoop. So last thing we got for you, under 23 World Team Trials. This is the first year, I believe, that UWW has done this, at least that I can recall. Things of note. So Chance Marsteller, we already talked about him a little bit. He made the finals, had a great run to the finals, but fell to Isaiah Martinez in 2 straight matches in the finals. The first one was lopsided. The second one, Chance actually had a lead with, I think, 15, 20 seconds to go. Imar put a big flurry together to get the winning takedown, but I think this summer and this fall have proven that, Chance living his life the right way he's right there, man. Josh Rodriguez, who wrestled at North Dakota State, now competes for the NLWC. He finished 3rd at 57 kilos. Brock Zackrell, competing for, I think it's just the Clarion Wrestling Club. I could be wrong with that. I apologize if I am.
If not, it'd be like Golden Eagle Wrestling Club. It's
something
like
similar, yeah. So Zackrell finished 4th at 65 kilos. Joey Goodhart takes 3rd at heavyweight.
Goodhart, Drexel kid from Hempfield, I think, District 3 also.
Yep. Yeah. I know he's a Drexel guy. I think Hempfield's right.
Yeah,
and
Hempfield. Yeah.
And then the last result that doesn't involve a Pennsylvania guy, but is worth mentioning regardless, Dayton Fix, a kid that graduated high school 5 months ago, beats Nathan Tomasello in 2 straight matches to make the world team. So Fix, a junior world champ, we already knew he was very, very, very good, but
he's proving that he's superhuman, and for an under 23 world team trial, this kid's like 18 years old. That's freakish.
Yikes is all I have to say. He's still going to redshirt from, at least that's what all signs point to. I mean, the guy he would wrestle off with is wrestling Darian Cruz in the NWCA All-Star duel. So they're doing.
Has it been confirmed that Fix will go 25? Because I know him and DeSanto were they going to wrestle at Dapper Dan or something like that? And then DeSanto pulled out. So, I mean, we just saw DeSanto's going up to 33. Is it for sure that Fix will be a 25?
That's been the word on the wire. But, I mean, at 33, they've got Cade Brock. So, I mean,
yeah, true.
Either way, you go, all right, well, it's not pitch.
A little bit of a roadblock almost for Oklahoma State there. All those guys are super young.
Yeah, my guess would be because Piccinini's a pretty big 25. And I don't have any idea what kind of weight the Cade Brock cuts. But my guess would be after Heil graduates, they're going to.
That's a pretty scary 1-2-3 combo. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, what Oklahoma State has now is a pretty scary 1-2-3 combo. But they're not really going to miss a beat, which is saying something after when they lose the guy that all signs point to Heil being a 4-time All-American and even
potentially 3-time.
Yeah, potentially 4-1-1-1. Not a bad career. I would have taken it as a career.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not?
Sounds all right. So, one of the things I was watching the broadcast of the under 23 trial finals, and they mentioned how Alex Deeringer, it was when Joey McKenna was wrestling Boo Llewellyn, who's an Oklahoma State guy, in the finals. They mentioned how Deeringer told a story about how his first couple months in the Oklahoma State room, and you know how this is, your first couple months in the college room, it is complete culture shock. You can't score points. It's awful. You think you're terrible at the sport, let alone you walk into a room like Oklahoma State's. That's just mind-boggling. But I thought that was really interesting to hear a guy like Deeringer, who went 3-1-1-1 at the national tournament, had one loss ever at the national tournament, and, talk about how for the first 2 months of his career, he couldn't score a point. And it just brought back some memories that I think I blocked out of my mind about sitting in the room against the wall crying because I'd never thought I was going to be good enough for college wrestling. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, as you were mentioning that story, I was thinking, I can't even really relate to that just because, I don't have any. I've suppressed all those memories. So good for Daringer, getting that story out there, but I couldn't really relate just because, I don't have those in my memory anymore.
That's pretty much it. There's a few that are so seared into my brain. There's one specific beating that Coach Hughes gave me that will live on forever as one of the darkest days of my life. It was bad, man. Yeah. So for those of you guys headed into college wrestling for your first years, be ready to fight. That's really all I can say. If you keep fighting, you will get better. If you trust the process, you absolutely will get better. But there's going to be some rough days, but it'll get better. So that said, I don't know. I think that's all we got, right?
Yeah, that's about all we got for, what is this, episode 10 now? Are we already up to the double digits?
I think we're at 9, but you Old Dominion guys and counting.
Our arithmetic is not always, on point.
Good word.
Had to throw it out there after butchering the order of the podcast. But, as we said, thanks everybody for listening. As always, send us your feedback on Twitter, on Facebook. Let us know what you guys like to hear, what kind of topics you want us to cover, and we'll do as best we can to get those topics covered for you guys. And we appreciate all the support and, the support like we heard from was it Terry Brands, talking about PA Power. That's a great thing to hear.
Yeah, so thank you guys, as always, for listening in. Hit us up on social media. If you're somebody that has the privilege or the burden of having our cell phone numbers, feel free to hit us up in any form. Let us know what you think. Please be kind. We are fragile humans.
Physically and mentally.
Hey, yeah. Man, the physically is happening quicker than I would like to. But let us know what you guys think, what we can do to improve it, what topics you want us guys to cover, especially now with the season kicking up. I'm so excited. Absolutely cannot wait. We're going to be covering duels this year. So if you guys are at duels with Pennsylvania schools and things like that, I'm sure you'll see us at one point or another.
Bust out the PA Power shirt.
Absolutely. For sure. If you do see us, I apologize in advance. Nobody should have to see my mug or Tristan's in person. They're rough, but bear with us.
Or hear Mason's voice. That's for sure.
Easy.
With that being said, that's going to wrap it up for us at the PA Power College Podcast. As always, thanks for dialing in. I'm Tristan Warner. Find me on Twitter at WarnTriz. And Mason Beckman, you can find him on Twitter at Beck_Diggity. Visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle, and go ahead and give us a friend on Facebook. Until next time, stay classy, wrestling fans.